Welcome, everybody, to Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker, back at you with another interactive class out of the out of the secret library of the Connected Universe. If I could get my words right, that'd be fantastic, right? No, we're starting about 5 minutes late here. A few technical issues just as we're about to start, and I'm looking a little blue here, hence the technical issues. But we can work with that. I mean, we're going to be talking about extraterrestrials, alien craft, the UFO phenomena, UAPs, all of that wonderful stuff tonight. Just as we're getting started here, I do want to give a big thank you to Jack McCarthy with a $5 super sticker. Really appreciate that. I work with Jack. So great to see you down there this evening. All right. So for those listening to the podcast version of this later, I do want to encourage everybody to join us every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time for the full Connecting the Universe experience, connecteduniverseportal.com. Out there at that website, you do get, of course, all the great interactive classes, but there's also sneak peek behind the scenes videos, monthly Q&A video, which was just posted this past weekend, exclusive articles, insider travel vlogs like ancient Egypt, Ireland, all those wonderful places. All this and more, connecteduniverseportal.com. I see a number of people down there in the chat already, which is absolutely fantastic. I do also want to remind those that are members of the Connected Universe portal, download the app. You get all the notifications, all the updates right to your phone immediately when things are posted out there. Also have the couple events that are coming up here soon. So Connecting the Universe, the event, Historic Bell Mansion, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Come and check that out. That is 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern time. 4 distinct presentations: Stargates and Portals, Ancient Symbolism is one. Then you have the Egypt and Atlantis connection, Triangle Areas of the World, Consciousness and Time Travel. And then, of course, next April, we have the second annual Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. So come join us for that as well. You can find all that information at my website, mikericksecker.com. All right, now we've got all the formalities out of the way. Let's go ahead and dive into the class question for this evening that I posted. And I've been posting this in several different places. So, of course, the Connected Universe Portal secret member group out there on Facebook. I posted out there on Instagram, and then out here on YouTube as well. And so the class question is, what type of extraterrestrial material do you believe the government may have recovered, if they have? Because we're going to be talking about that recovery, or that proposed recovery, this evening. And so responses that we had to that were, Tom McNicholas said, an alien probe craft, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, if we were to go to some sort of planet out there in the cosmos with intelligent life, we would probably be sending some probes as well. I mean, we already do, to the moon, to Mars, out into the cosmos, different areas of the solar system. We do that. Kane Mayaneki says, a plant, just to disappoint me. It's not so disappointing, though, because there are a number of things on this earth, if you believe in panspermia, so basically things coming from outside of our planet on meteorites and what have you, that hit the earth in life forms. So one of the proposed things that may have come from outside of Earth, the octopus. Very, very much unlike anything else that we have here on Earth. Very, very different. Of course, a lot of our water comes to us via, or has come to us via panspermia, meteorites with ice crashing into the Earth, and that water vapor eventually turns into water and rain. Lindsay says, I think a lot of our technological advancements have been possible because of technology recovered from UFOs. After Roswell, it seems that there was a major boom in growth of technology. Just my opinion. Yeah, that's one of the interesting aspects of this whole phenomenon. Some people say, well, we were coming out of World War II. Computing was really starting to take off based off of like the Turing machine and those sorts of things. As far as the United States, we had a big industrial boom around that time. But that's also when we had the big UFO flaps, Roswell, the 1952 flap with the UFOs buzzing the Capitol. Of course, that was one of the highest years for reported spacecraft sightings back at that time. We tend to forget that those things happened, which is something we're going to discuss this evening. Is why is it that we're paying attention to these more recent sightings and really forgetting a lot of those things that happened in the past? So, all right, let's get into why we are here this evening. And oh, there's Jen. Good evening from the airport. She'll be on her way over here shortly. And I like Jack here, an alien Garmin truck. Very, very cool. Haley's down in the house. Great to see Haley. Crow Emil, great to see you as well. And yeah, Sarah, I wonder what the aliens would think with the giant haze obscuring their view. Yeah, it'd be a little tough right now. With all the wildfires there up in Canada. New York looked absolutely terrible today. We've had a slight haze here. Not too bad. Cleveland, Ohio area. But yeah, New York looked terrible. And actually, Jen and I saw some of that in Rhode Island when I was there last week and really weren't sure what it was. Yeah, her friend had said something about, yeah, it seems like something might be, burning. Come to find out, oh yeah, burning up in Canada. Okay. So here we go. We'll get into it. So this is the recent thing that came out here. And originally we were going to do a class on consciousness. I put that to our Connected Universe members at the end of last week's class when we went to our after hours part. And I left it to them. What do you guys want to talk about? And I basically gave them the list of topics we're going to be talking at Bell Mansion here this coming weekend. They all chose consciousness. And that's what we were going to talk about this week. I'd put everything up there last night, this morning. And then because of this, I kept getting hit up about it. People kept asking me questions. So it's like, all right, we'll change the class up for today. And we'll go back to consciousness next time around. So this is David Grusch. He's an Air Force veteran, former member of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and now a whistleblower. Basically, he filed a whistleblower report with Congress and the intelligence community inspector general. And according to him, he has extensive classified information about deeply covert programs that he says possess retrieved intact and partially intact craft of non-human origin. So basically, he's saying we've got alien craft. And he did it in a different way than has been done before. Usually what happens is somebody goes to the press and they report it, like Bob Lazar. We'll talk a little bit about him later. Rick Doty came out with information. We'll talk a little bit about Rick. Actually, we have some clips from Rick. But what Grusch did is he actually filed a whistleblower complaint. So they actually have to formally look into it. Now, it still gives them a heads up that, okay, we're going to come and inspect, these claims and what you have. And it still gives them some time to hide things away. And of course, at this point, deny, the new Arrow organization filed a statement out of the Pentagon that said, yeah, we don't have any reports of any retrieved and intact aircraft, or not aircraft, but extraterrestrial craft. So right now, they're not claiming anything. They're basically denying at this point. But it has to formally be researched now because this complaint has been filed. So who is this guy? Who is Grusch? So basically, he's a decorated former combat officer in Afghanistan, veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, like we kind of already stated. Also, the National Reconnaissance Office. He served as that office's representative to the UAP Task Force from 2019 to 2021. And from 2021 to July of last year, he was the NGA's co-lead for UAP analysis and as representative to the task force. So by all counts, He has a good reputation, a good track record. So that's good. That all works in his favor. Here's this guy that pretty much has a squeaky clean record that is coming forward and saying, "Hey, um, I have this information. They're hiding things. They're hiding things that the public should know about, and I want you guys to look into it." The one issue is that the information that he has, he didn't directly see. Everything that he is talking about was essentially told to him. And that's where it starts getting a little iffy. So these different people confided in him. We don't really know about the documents that he might have because of the fact that they would be classified documents, can't be released to the public for us to see because of their security classification. However, by doing the whistleblower report, those organizations, I guess whoever has the clearance uh, in the quote unquote need to know, would therefore be able to take a look at these different things. But right now, the public can't. So we're all going off of what he said. And that's kind of been the frustrating part for the public here is we keep having these guys come out and say, I see this, I saw that. Of course, this is aside from our UFO witnesses, those that have, I don't know, like seen the Phoenix lights. A couple of weeks ago, we played some clips, mold Edge of the Rabbit Hole clips from Jim Peniston and Terry Lovelace when we had them on the show and their experiences, Rendlesham Forest, Devil's Den, those places. So those are, reports from, civilian, well, actually Jim Peniston would have been Air Force, but basically, reports from First Observer. So what we don't have is, the government saying, we have this. That's where it's never come from. And that's kind of what makes this a little bit elusive. Now, they've started to give up a little, and they kind of have to. So, okay, now we have this UAP task force. We have a congressional hearing. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we go along. Because they kind of have to at this point. Before it was, blurry photos of things in the sky. It was just eyewitness testimony of people saying, I saw this, I saw that. We didn't have those really nice photos and pieces of video like we do today. People are walking around with HD cameras in their pockets and are able to film this stuff all the time. So they had to give up and concede a little bit to say, okay, we at least have to give up a little bit of something here. And we'll say we're looking into something. But as we'll see, the guys that they put out there, they're saying the bare minimum to get by. And a few comments down in here. And why don't they show the UFO wreckage on TV? Well, and see, that's the thing. Any sort of wreckage that is found, immediately confiscated by the U.S. government, like Roswell, it was discovered. And then the government came in and said, oh, we're not going to call it a UFO. We're going to call it a weather balloon and things like that. The U.S. government is, until they absolutely have to, they're going to deny. Even when we get into the congressional hearing, just the clips that they showed, they were the most obscure clips that you could possibly dig up out of thousands and thousands of videos and photos and things like that are out there. They showed one was, okay, this is a clip that we're able to debunk. Great. The other one, almost like a little bubble that goes by so quick, the person operating the software to try to pause the video couldn't do it because that frame wasn't at a pause point. And you couldn't find a better clip. It's all a show. It's all a show. So I'm gonna play a couple of clips from. We're gonna get into some of Rick Doty's uh, testimony because this, okay, coming out and saying they have downed spacecraft, they have material, they have parts. We've actually heard these stories before. So this story actually is not new. The way the news coverage is handling it, they are handling it as it's new. The one difference, again, is the fact that it was a whistleblower complaint that was filed. But there being claims of having craft, I mean, that's what Area 51 is all about. How long did it take the government to finally admit that Area 51 actually existed, right? So we've heard these stories before and over and over and over again. And I'm gonna play these clips from Rick, and then we're kind of going to discuss all this.
So you mentioned earlier that you saw UFOs at Area 51, Groom Lake. What exactly did you see?
Well, we would, myself and my partner out there, we would drive around, and we had missions to do. We had people to speak with. The base was quite large, so you had to drive around. And one particular night, we drove to a really remote location on the base. It was actually down past Papoose Lake towards the Nevada test site, which is, of course, now the Nevada National Security Site. It was a small complex down there that we had to go down and interview somebody, and it was because of something relating to the ET contact. And it was somewhat late at night when we were driving back, and as we were driving on the road, and there's several checkpoints between where we were and to the cantonment area of Area 51, where we actually had our billets. We saw something flying, and this thing was doing maneuvers that I'd never seen an airplane do. It was flying in circles, and it would stop. It would shoot up, ascend to a certain point, stop, and then descend to almost the ground level. My partner and I drove over towards where this was, and we sat there in our vehicle. We actually got out of the vehicle and stood outside and watched this thing for probably 45 minutes. And then eventually it landed back at Groom Lake. So we drove back to the base, and we, again, it was about 30-minute drive from where we were at to the base. We got to the base, we drove down next to the flight line. Now, as I said earlier, I didn't have access to everything on the base. We did have access to some areas of the flight line, but we couldn't go out on the flight line, and we couldn't go into most of the hangars. We saw this thing on the ground, and we saw it being moved into a hangar, a very large hangar. So we went back to our billets, went to bed next morning, and went to the office. My supervisor's last name was Hutchinson. Unfortunately, he passed away some years ago. Hutch, we referred to him as Hutch. I went in and sat down at his desk, and I said, "Hey, Hutch, we saw something flying last night. Can you?" And he was briefed into a lot more programs than when I was. He said, "I guess you saw one of our toys that we're trying to reverse engineer." And that's all he told us.
Oh, wow.
Told me. So I said, okay. So then I, over a period of time, slowly gained access to two sides of what we were doing out there. The recovered crafts that we had at S2, we were trying to fly. And then on the other side of the coin, we were trying to reverse engineer the recovered crafts. And a good example of this was the Cash Landrum case in 1980. We had a large UFO that we had recovered, and I don't know where we recovered it. We couldn't get the propulsion system to work. So we placed an experimental nuclear propulsion system on this craft, and we flew it. And that was the one that was involved in the Cash Landrum case. So that's an example of a reverse engineering, partly reverse engineering. We couldn't reverse engineer the engine because we couldn't understand how the propulsion system worked.
Well, you
And
mentioned Bob Lazar earlier.
right now, let me
and-
explain something else out there.
Sure.
This is somewhat of a conundrum with some people. We had different flying crafts from different extraterrestrial races. They were all different. I mean, extremely different. I know one particular person in the UFO community says, I can't understand why we can't get these crafts to work. You get the one to work, you can get the other to work. That doesn't work that way. If you talk to Dr. Putoff and some of the other scientists that knew and worked on these things, you realize the science and the technology of these different crafts are entirely different. The propulsion
Because
system,
they're all from different races.
Exactly. They're all from different races and they're all manufactured differently. And that's why we had so much, we have so much trouble then, and I'm sure we still have trouble now, trying to reverse engineer.
All right, a little sneak peek there of Edge of the Rabbit Hole, which we're going to be going back to here. Well, not back to, but basically include as part of Connecting the Universe here in 2 weeks. Victoria will be back. Alexandra Holzer will be our first guest on that, talking about the Amityville case, the new film that is out there on Tubi, and regarding her father's work. In any case, there with Rick. Now, Rick is former Air Force OSI, Office of Special Investigations, and his original role was as counterintelligence. And a lot of people like to use that against him, and I completely understand, because in that particular role, it's for disinformation purposes. And so, he was tasked with going to these locations, digging up as much information as he could about what happened at that particular location. And for the news releases and what have you later on, that information was used to spread disinformation. So it's not necessarily that Rick himself was spreading disinformation, is that was the nature of his investigations and what it eventually was used for. I kind of look at it as a very similar role to what J. Allen Hynek had in his early days with Project Blue Book, because he was brought in basically to look at the scientific aspects of these different UFO sightings. And the information that he gathered was used to spin a story of, this happened or that happened, some legitimate excuse. And when it comes to Project Blue Book, and there's J. Allen Hynek there. When it comes to Project Blue Book, there are 13,000 cases that were officially filed with them. 700 are still open. Now, what happened with Hynek is, as he was going through this for years and years, he eventually became a believer in the UFO phenomenon, because there are so many things that he could not explain in these cases that he was like, hold up a minute. Some of these we cannot just excuse away. There's actually legitimate, UFO activity that is going on in some of these cases. And so that's kind of what I look at with Rick, is that, there came that point where he's like, I'm going to talk about what I saw. And so he was there at Area 51, start talking about the reverse engineering of propulsion systems and things like that. And that's, the government's big interest in all of this. How can they reverse engineer this alien technology? And that's what, the one of the comments there for the class question was in the beginning, is that, hey, we had these big UFO flaps, and then all of a sudden, boom, we had these big bursts of technology. And it could very well be the case that, that's what happened. They were able to reverse engineer some of those different things. And so if we have more craft that are crash landing and there's other technology there for us to glean, well, our government is going to want to extract that technology and be able to use it for, well, what do governments usually want that type of technology for? Defense. They always want to be able to one up the opposition, because should war break out at some point, you want to have the better, more advanced technology. And so that's what any government around the world would want to be doing with such a thing. So, on the idea of propulsion, I do have another clip from Rick here talking about uh, Bob Lazar, and what Bob was doing in his role. So we'll bring that up here real quick.
Now, you had mentioned Bob Lazar earlier. Now, Bob was supposed to be working on reverse engineering those propulsion systems. How closely related was that, what he was working on, to what you were witnessing there?
Well, Bob was there after I left. Okay.
Okay.
Bob talks about S4. Now, if you look at Papoose Lake, you look at a map that George Knapp had put out, the complex that Papoose Lake was S2. That's what it was called. The area that Bob Lazar worked was 4 levels under that, and that was called S4. The S2, or the top area that you entered, was the administrative control center for whatever was underground. I never had access to anything underground. I had access to the control center, or S2 complex. And S2 is where I went a number of times to conduct investigations, but I never visited, nor did I have access to S4. And so Bob Lazar talks about S4. And so he's telling the truth. I believe everything Bob Lazar says. The entry control procedures that I quizzed him on, he knew everything about those. And of course, after I left, they developed some new entry control procedures, the handprint, which we didn't have when I was there, but the exchange badge system, where the vehicle was parked when you entered S2, where the elevators were. I quizzed him on all those things, and he answered every single one of them correctly. So I'm convinced that what Bob Lazar said was, in fact, truthful.
Is there
I'm in just a quick comment. I'll let you ask the question here in a second, Victoria. And I just want to tell Rick real quick that I'm also in the camp. I believe Bob. Now, of course, I was not out there during my time in the Air Force. I'd never witnessed any of that stuff. But it's actually more from Bob's personal story when he talks about what happened between him and his wife, and everything that he went through, where he almost had his clearance revoked for a time because of all that, where I went through something very similar with my ex-wife while I was at NSA. It's just every detail he gave on that was like, I went through the exact same thing. I know exactly what he's talking about. I believe this guy based on something personal, not anything technological. So
yeah, that's when it comes to talking with some of these people about what they've seen, what they've experienced, because guys like Rick, myself, we've been in those different situations. It helps us to to really vet some of these people that make these different claims. So Rick basically vetted Bob on the makeup of the facility and different things that were actually there at the facility. For me, it was in the personal side of Bob's story. On the flip side of that, there are people, I'm not going to throw any names here, but there are people who have come forward with various stories that I'm able to sit back and say, no, that one's not true. And I'll just give an example, again, not using a name. Some years ago, there was a person, one of their claims, and this is a person that has made several claims over the years about having insiders to different locations. And, I have he would say, just as an example, I have an insider at NSA who says that the 7th floor of NSA is where they're doing all the alien research. Okay. Just from that one little statement right there, I'm able to look at them and be like, no, discredit it. I spent some time at NSA. You would never say on the 7th floor of NSA. Because if you're talking about the headquarters at Fort Meade, Maryland, now NSA has satellite installations all over the country, all over the globe. But if you're talking about the headquarters installation there's 4 buildings. And 3 of those buildings have more than 7 floors. So you would say, the 7th floor of building 2A, or the 7th floor of the headquarters building. There's only one floor that's like the floor, the 10th floor. And you know exactly what that is. If you're saying 10th floor of NSA, well, that's where all the brass is located at. And that was 10th floor of the headquarters building, which the brass is no longer on the 10th floor of the headquarters building. They're actually in a different building on a different floor, but it's still referred to as the 10th floor, even though it's not anymore. So it's just those little, snippets of information, things that people say that you're like, no, this guy. So yeah, when it comes to this new bit of news that has come out, with Grusch, he hasn't really given us any details yet to say anything one way or the other. He's basically said the government has retrieved some extraterrestrial craft. That's about what it is amount to. So we kind of really have to play the wait and see game with this one to see what comes out of it. I've seen a number of my colleagues making posts, and everybody's excited. Okay, what's the new bit of information that's going to come out? Will something be revealed? Now, when you file a whistleblower complaint, it's not that something's going to happen tomorrow. There is a formal investigation process that they are going to have to go through. So don't expect anything anytime soon. It will be down the road, but the timing is interesting because they have some more of these UAP hearings that are coming up. They're actually Contact in the Desert was this past weekend, so kind of nicely timed with that as well, where a lot of people go to that particular conference, and so it's on people's minds, and then boom. I saw Giorgio from Ancient Aliens making some posts about, I've got some questions here for them. So it's nice to see that dialogue and that conversation going. Sarah Yusuf says, I have an issue with applying our math to alien science. Seems like a conflict. Well, I think there's going to be some math that's universal, but most of our math is what we would call Newtonian physics, right? And there's a certain point in the quantum world where that breaks down and you have conflicts. Now, an alien race, they might even know something beyond quantum, or what we are calling quantum at this point. If they are able to, you have to think about it. They are probably not using our Newtonian physics to come to Earth. Maybe they can live thousands of years, hundreds of years, maybe. We can't. So basically, we can't send ourselves off to the next solar system because we just don't have the resources to be able to outfit a spaceship that would last that long, plus have the humans inside survive that long. Maybe biologically, these ETs are a little different, but more than likely they have figured out some other way to be able to traverse the cosmos. Maybe they have figured out how to use a Stargate or a portal. Maybe they have, figured out how to travel the speed of light. We don't know. Or, these could be probes. We don't know the nature of what has been found yet because that hasn't been revealed to us yet as far as this latest report. Now, Others that have come forth have said, okay, they have, like what Rick was saying, we have multiple craft from multiple races with different propulsion systems. Some is, come forward and said, we have, actual, ET bodies. Actually, if you go further into that interview that we had with Rick, which you can find the link to that interview on the YouTube side, and I think I put it on the Connected Universe side as well, to that full interview there. The link is down below. But further on, he continues to say that, the Roswell crash, there was a survivor of that lasted until 1952, 52 or 53. I think he said 52, and was providing information that we were able to use, which again, back to is that, why we had a big technological boom around that time. I mean, it's very possible. So, and again, looking at Roswell, we have that cover up there. Where initially it was reported as a UFO that was down, that had crashed, and then all of a sudden, we're turning it into a weather balloon. And that is typically what we see our government do. Are these cover-ups. And why is that? What's going on? Well, one of the things we already mentioned was that they want that technology. They are going to hide it from their adversaries as much as they can. The other thing is that they want to keep the status quo with the public. And there was a fascinating report that was put together in 1960. It's called the Brookings Report. And essentially states that, well, here's the New York Times headline at the time. Mankind is warned to prepare for discovery of life in space. Brookings Institution report says Earth civilization may topple if faced by a race of superior beings. So, it's essentially the idea here that if there is this revelation that we are not alone in the universe, and that, hey, if they've even visited here, if they're amongst us, that would cause panic. Now, a rational person individually is like, that's not a big deal. I mean, we've kind of been conditioned here over the past, 40, almost 50 years now that, extraterrestrials, ETs, spacefaring races, that's all, our science fiction, our sci-fi movies have pretty much done that to us, right? But then there's this, and I posted this earlier today in social media from Men in Black. Will Smith says, people are smart, they can handle it. Tommy Lee Jones responds, a person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. And the bottom of the meme has the people fighting over the toilet paper. I actually put this together during the whole toilet paper craze there a couple of years ago. And this is what happens is, one rational person, they're going to be cool with it. But you start to get that, that herd mentality where you get a handful of people here that they go nuts, they go bonkers, they start panicking, and they will do things like go to the store and strip the shelves of everything. Well, hey, these nutballs over here are, hoarding everything and stripping the stores of, just our basic goods that we need. Oh crap, I'm not stocked up enough here at home. I better go to the store and get some things before these nut jobs, take it all. And so, it just becomes this domino effect where, everybody starts going and buying it up because they're afraid this person and that person over there, the nut jobs that caused this panic, will take everything. And that's, we see that effect, every winter, right? The forecast calls for a couple of inches of snow, and a couple of these people over here will be like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be like we're snowed in for a week, and we need to grab all the stuff off of a couple inches. You know, I don't know how many times I've been to the store and, you know, aisles are clear. I'm like, I'm gonna check my weather app. Oh yeah, we're supposed to get 2 inches tonight. But that's what happens. So Jack was in here earlier. Jack, I don't know if you're still down there, but when I posted that on Twitter this morning, his remark was, "I remember when I first saw that scene, and it struck me as undeniable." Yeah, yeah. It really is. That is that crazy herd mentality that happens, and it's really just a couple that start it. You know, it's just a couple that start going crazy, and all the others around are reacting to it. You know, some out of, really, I think a lot of it is, preservation. You know, the idea that, if I don't go and get this, that, and the other thing, it will be gone because these crazy people here are going to grab it all, and that's what creates the mass panic. So you guys have some comments down here. There's DA, Mike, and everyone. First time I finally made it live. Pink waving hand. Oh, there must be an emoji that didn't come through there right away. And Karen, yes, with hurricanes too. I can understand hurricanes because you never know with a hurricane. It might blow through and you're fine, but sometimes you might be down for a week, right? So that I can kind of understand. But the thing is, with a hurricane, you have, several days, maybe a week ahead of time, knowing that it's coming. Like, you've been watching the storm, you've heard, you've seen the stories of it brewing down there in the Caribbean and coming up. By the time it's hitting, let's say it's coming right up the East Coast, by the time that it's hitting like the Carolinas, you've already known for a while that the thing was coming up the coast. A little bit different for, like, my uncle lives in St. Thomas. A little bit different for him because it's the storm is very new and they get hammered. But you have a little time there to gather things up. But I can understand a hurricane a little bit more. Or if, the forecast is calling for we're going to get a foot tonight. All right. But I see it happen a lot of time with a couple inches. So let's see. Android, great to see you down there. If people panic from a virus that kills about 0.5% of people, then aliens will call way worse panic. And yeah, and that's kind of the fear here. And that's one of the things that they are they don't want to have happen. And it's not just from a supply standpoint, which would happen, but you would have absolutely undeniable confirmation that your government has been lying to you. Now, we all laugh and joke about, politicians being corrupt. But I mean, guys, it's not a joke. They are corrupt. They are corrupt. Come on. They are. I've dabbled in that field before. You have a couple, outliers. There are a handful in there that are trying to do some good. But they get highly discouraged, and they're met with they're hitting the wall all the time with these other guys that are corrupt and wheeling and dealing. It goes both sides. I won't dive down that road, but in any case, I always say that politicians are just rich, powerful people looking for more money and power. It's kind of the way it is. And so, one of the things that they don't want to have happen is for something bold in your face. Boom, we have been lying to you about this. Got into a little bit of a debate on social media earlier today about that, and without, coughing up names and getting too deep, kind of one of the things that came out of with that is this idea, and I'll just throw this out there. When it comes to the UFO cover-up, this is from the person who was debating me on this. A UFO cover-up conspiracy would have to span decades, cross international borders, and transcend political administrations. It's one thing to say that a given president or even a country might be able to successfully hide evidence of a crashed saucer, extraterrestrial technology, or bodies, but it's quite another to claim that all the world's governments in perpetuity, regardless of which political party is in power, and even among enemies, have colluded to continue the cover-up. Here's the thing. It's not the overarching government. It's not your basic congressman is not in the know on these things. They know as much as the public knows. Maybe a smidge more, because like when we had the UAP hearings, they had a classified section of that as well, where basically they were talking about the effect of that on national defense. And, that's as much as the average congressman is going to get. Are things hidden from your president? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, they are. It's not the overall large mass government body that's in the know on these things and covering these things up. There's too many people. There's too many people to try to keep secret, all of those years. It's small cells, small, very select groups and cells, most of which don't know what the other is doing. Some of them don't even know that the other groups and cells are out there, but they exist. And so, like when Rick is out there at Area 51, the rest of the government is not knowing what in the world is going on in there. They're as oblivious to it as we are. Okay. So it doesn't have to be in perpetuity. All these governments, all, the different politicians, they don't know what's going on there. They don't know, because it's kept very, very, very compartmentalized. And it's really hard. A number of my colleagues have had, like Rick, like Bob, like some of these others that have come forward over the years. It's very, very hard to try to describe to somebody how that works, because in the corporate world, you're used to a top-down structure, and in the government there is that basic structure too, where you report up, and then the governing body, like your board of directors, basically knows what's going on within the company. Like the company that Jack and I work for, they might not know, all the little, programs and things that we are deploying on a daily basis. What goes into that code, but they know the functionality of what our department does. We deploy the software packages, create the code and all that for the truck maintenance department to keep that going. They know that. In the government and in these different organizations, there is not that. There's a basic structure of that where, yes, that's going on over here. But then there are these other cells that if you don't have the need to know that it exists, you don't know that it exists. And so that's how this is able to be kept secret over all of these years. And I don't know how better to describe that. You kind of have to be in it to get it, but that's the way it works. And it does not make sense. It's like, how can something like that function? That's something that Stephen Greer has done a lot with the special access groups. Those exist, these groups out there that really aren't known about, but yet they get funded with the money. And they always say, follow the money. And the crazy thing is that within these government organizations, it's actually hard to track where that money goes. It goes over here somewhere, but it kind of disappears, because it disappears into those different secret groups. And if you don't have a need to know, then you can't see it. So, all right, I kind of dove into that one a little bit, but it's an interesting conversation to have. because it's one of the things that in this type of research and trying to talk about this subject, when people are asking questions about, well, how could we not know this? How could that not be revealed? It's hard to put all the pieces together because of not just top secret security clearance. I mean, I had a top secret security clearance, but that doesn't mean that I could get into everywhere and anywhere. There were certain letter compartments assigned to me. So with those different lettered compartments, I could potentially get into this area, that area, that area. But again, it came down to that need to know. Just because I could go there technically, there was still the aspect, okay, you're here. Yep, I see that you have the proper clearance, but why do you need to be here? And if I couldn't answer that question of why I needed to be there, nope. So Jack, $5 super chat. Thank you again, Jack. I really appreciate that. Yes, what sort of event would have to take place that would make the presence of aliens indisputable, as in something that couldn't be covered up? Alien invasion, right? We talk about aliens landing on the White House lawn. Yeah, it would have to be like a big event like that, something indisputable, large craft over a city. I guess, kind of almost think like Independence Day sort of thing to happen. That would be pretty indisputable. Of course, if our government finally revealed, hey, yeah, we've got this, and they finally admitted it. Yeah. But I think the thing is that, we're not having like those large scale, almost invasion like interactions. Again, we're talking about, okay, a spacefaring race that is traveling across the cosmos. Again, solar systems are pretty far from each other. So I have to imagine that even though they might have the technology to do it, it's still, there's some challenge, there's some work in getting from one solar system to another. So are you going to send an entire deluge of ships to, to a planet? I mean, like, Tom suggested at the beginning, a probe. Some of this might just be a probe, or it might be, it might be a single, delegation, a little research team, a couple of guys that are investigating a new planet that they've encountered, that sort of thing. So, it might take something like, some civilization that sent somebody here trying to figure out what happened to our guys and send something bigger our way. It might take something like that. So we could kind of speculate on that all night, actually. We could talk about all kinds of sci-fi movies and what have you. But that's interesting because those movies and those television shows and that sort of thing have really kept the dialogue going, because it turned more from people seeing things in the skies in the 40s and 50s to, okay, now we're going to start creating some stories about not only what people are seeing, but who are in these ships and where are they from. And it's not always just some green monster that's here to invade the planet or something like that. It's kind of some of the stories that were talked about. And you look at some of the stuff that came out of the 50s, and then we started putting personalities into some of these alien races, and so we started having this interesting dialogue about who and what they may actually be and how they may actually be getting here. Android says, if it becomes established fact that they've been hiding these from oversight, do you think people will go to jail? Somebody will take the hammer. Sure. Will it be all those that that were in the know? That there's always going to be a patsy, right? When it comes to that, we're going to throw it on this guy or these couple of people over here, and the ones that orchestrated it all, the master planners. Well, they're the master planners. They're going to get themselves out of it somehow, some way. Usually, so DA invasion, or perhaps we tried nuking one another. And that's another thing, is that a lot of people believe that once we started playing around with nuclear technology, that it sent a vibration out through the universe, and other civilizations that learned how to pick up on that particular signal, that particular vibration. We're like, uh-oh, there's a planet over there that's messing around with nuclear technology. Let's drop in on them and try to do something to prevent that from happening. Because if we were to destroy the planet, you have to think about the ripple effect across the universe. And this is why, like with Star Wars, absolutely love Star Wars, but blowing up a planet, or like what happened in the newer ones where they're blowing up several planets, it would actually have a massive repercussion on not just, you're destroying a planet. Sure, the whole rest of the solar system is affected by that. So if you were to take Earth out of there, it would affect Mars, it would affect Jupiter. All the other planets would be greatly affected by that, which in turn, you're affecting the solar system. Well, the solar system is part of a galaxy. You're affecting one part of the galaxy like that. Well, it's that ripple effect. The whole rest of the galaxy is going to start feeling that repercussion, which then, of course, would stretch out to other galaxies. So those of you that are familiar with connected universe, I've shown that Chandra X-ray image where it shows you get those bright yellow dots that are connected by the filaments of gas. All the different galaxies are connected to each other. So you do something destructive with one like that, it's going to affect the others. So since we did, I did want to, since we were kind of going down this path, the UAP hearings from last year real quick. This is kind of how this is a little bit just ridiculous with what goes on with some of the different organizations. So, and I loved Mike Gallagher here, congressman from Wisconsin. He basically took the two representatives that were brought to the UAP hearings by the government were Ronald Moultrie, who's Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, and Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, Scott Bray. Both of them were really, really evasive in answering any questions. And when they were basically, they kept saying that they weren't aware of anything official. They'd throw out an example, like, okay, are you aware of anything at the end of from Project Blue Book to ATIP? Now you're talking 1969 to 2007. They're like, well, we're not aware of anything official. Well, that's because there weren't official programs in place at that time. Then Gallagher specifically said, okay, what about the Maelstrom case? Now, this is a very important case because it involved 10 nuclear ICBMs that were rendered inoperable in Montana. Both of these guys denied knowing anything about the incident. Now, it's like, this is basically the job that you're tasked with. You need to know about, the bigger cases, especially when it comes down to national defense, like nuclear warheads. Both were saying they haven't seen any official data on that. Moultrie said, well, if something that was officially brought to our attention, we would look at it. There are many things that are out there in the ether that aren't officially brought to our attention. And so Gallagher, right in the middle of this hearing, says, okay, well, how would it have to be officially brought to your attention then? I'm bringing it to your attention. This is pretty official. Yeah, government hearing would be pretty official. So, yeah, it's one of those where, the official government representatives do the dance, to do the dance, to do the dance. And, there's most people will kind of nod their head. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But you do have some sharp people out there that will be like, well, wait a minute now. Wait a minute. Let me try to get, kind of specific here on you. What about this? What about that? And you get down to it. These guys don't know. They don't know. And why is it? Because these couple of guys, they don't have that need to know. They're just the figureheads at that time. Go up there in front of Congress. We'll give you a little information here. That should be enough. Aside from that, just dance the dance. And they did that a lot. So we're getting down toward the end here. And DA, $10 super chat there. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate all of you this evening having this discussion. And yeah, it's important information to get out to everyone. It's a discussion we're going to be having for a long time here. I mean, we're just scratching the surface here with all this and discussion that we're having. There have been guys that have been in this field doing this research for decades, and I kind of touch all different areas. Again, connected universe, it's all connected, and this is one that's it affects us in a lot of different ways and other topics that that I cover, because it does get into that political arena. It does get into national defense. It does get into the way information is handled and given to us. We're seeing and witnessing all these different things. It's a little bit different than like the paranormal or supernatural field, where we're seeing these things that people are saying you're crazy. Now, they used to do that with UFOs. Oh, you're crazy. Now it's more of, it's unexplained. Maybe it's a Mylar balloon, or maybe there's a foreign technology, or maybe it's secret government program. It's still evasive, the different answers that were given about this. So, all right, so we're going to wrap this up here. I do want to, before we go here, the next time that we come back for this, I'm going to be on the road next week. So no Connecting the Universe next week. We're going to come back on June 21st, and this is going to be our special Edge of the Rabbit Hole episode with our guest, Alexandra Holzer. I do have a promo clip for you guys that Victoria put together here. All right, so that'll do it. Members of the Connected Universe portal, I will see you down in the portal side. And everybody else, you have a wonderful evening. We will see you again on the 21st. Till next time, time really exists.